Sarah Chun pressed her face against the small window of the salvage ship. The space station hung in the darkness like a broken toy. It was huge, bigger than any space station she had ever seen, but it looked dead. Dark metal twisted in strange shapes. Holes covered its surface like wounds. Parts of it floated away slowly, pulled by the weak gravity of the nearby moon. "Captain, are you sure about this?" Marcus Rodriguez asked from behind her. He was the ship's systems expert. His voice sounded worried. "That thing looks ready to fall apart." Sarah turned around. Her crew sat around the small table in the ship's main room. Marcus looked nervous. Dr. Yuki Tanaka studied her tablet, reading data about the station. Pavel Volkov cleaned his glasses and stared at his computer screen. They were good people, smart people, but right now they all looked scared. "The Galactic Council says it's worthless," Sarah said. 3 different alien races tried to fix it. All of them gave up. They say it's too dangerous and too broken. "Maybe they're right," Pavel said quietly. He was their computer expert. "The energy readings are all wrong. Nothing makes sense," Sarah smiled. "That's exactly why we're here. When other people say something can't be done, humans usually find a way to do it anyway." She walked to the front of the ship and looked at the controls. Their salvage vessel, the Persistence, was small but tough. It had saved them many times before. Like her crew, it never gave up easily. The ship moved closer to the giant station. "Look at the size of that thing," Yuki said, joining Sarah at the window. She was an engineer who specialized in building structures. "It must be 20 kilometers long. How did they build something so big? More importantly, who built it?" Marcus asked. "The records say it's been floating here for over 200 years. But the metal looks much older than that." Sarah checked the readings on her screen. The station was cold and mostly dark, but not completely dark. Small lights flickered in some areas. Power was getting to parts of it somehow. That was strange for something that was supposed to be completely dead. "There's still power in some sections," she said. "Not much, but something is keeping basic systems running." "Emergency power, maybe?" Pavel suggested. "Some alien backup system." "We don't understand?" The Persistence got closer to the station. Now they could see details. The metal was not like anything humans built. It curved in flowing shapes that seemed to grow instead of being constructed. Strange symbols covered the surface. Some areas looked melted. Others looked like they had been cut by giant knives. "Docking bay ahead," Marcus reported. "Looks intact." "I think we can land there." Sarah nodded. "Take us in. But be ready to run if something goes wrong." The ship entered the docking bay slowly. The bay was enormous. It could hold 50 ships their size. Emergency lights came on as they approached. That meant someone or something was still watching the station. The air readers showed the bay had atmosphere, but it was thin and cold. They landed with a soft bump. Sarah looked at her crew. Everyone checks their suits twice. "We don't know what's in there." They put on their spacesuits and gathered their tools. Marcus carried his electronic scanner and repair kit. Yuki brought her engineering tools and a portable computer. Pavel had his laptop and several devices for connecting to alien computer systems. Sarah carried the basic survival gear and her trusty toolbox. The docking bay was quiet, except for the sound of their breathing in their helmets. Their footsteps echoed in the huge space. The walls were covered with the same flowing designs they had seen outside. Up close, the symbols looked even stranger. They seemed to move in the corner of their eyes, but when they looked directly, the symbols were still. "Energy readings are stronger here," Marcus said, checking his scanner. "Something big is generating power deeper in the station." They found a door that led into the station proper. It was sealed, but Pavel found what looked like a control panel next to it. The symbols on the panel glowed softly when he touched them. "I can't read any of this," he said. "But maybe I can figure out the pattern." He pressed different symbols. Nothing happened for several minutes. Then the door made a grinding sound and opened slowly. Air rushed out, then stopped. Lights came on in the corridor beyond. "Well, that worked," Yuki said. "The station knows we're here." They walked into the corridor. It was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The walls curved upward and met in a point above their heads. More symbols covered everything, but these symbols were different. They showed pictures of stars and planets and strange creatures. "It's like a story," Sarah said, looking at the wall pictures. "Or maybe instructions." They walked for 20 minutes, following the main corridor. Side passages branched off in all directions. Some were blocked by fallen debris. Others disappeared into darkness. But the main corridor stayed lit, as if the station wanted them to follow this path. They came to a huge room with a ceiling so high they could not see the top. Machines lined the walls, but they were silent and dark. In the center of the room stood something that looked like a tree made of metal and crystal. Light pulsed through it slowly, like a heartbeat. "That's the power source," Marcus said, reading his scanner. "It's generating energy, but only a tiny amount of what it could produce." Yuki walked around the room, examining the machines. "This is incredible. The technology is so advanced, I can barely understand it. But look at this." She pointed to one machine that was partially collapsed. "It's been repaired before. Someone tried to fix it, but they didn't understand how it worked." Pavel connected his laptop to a panel near the metal tree. His screen filled with symbols and patterns. "There's a computer system here. It's active, but it's running in some kind of safe mode, like it's waiting for something." Sarah stood in the center of the room and looked around. The station felt old, older than anything she had ever experienced, but it also felt alive somehow, like it was sleeping, not dead. "The other races that tried to fix this place," she said slowly. "I think they approached it wrong. They tried to understand it first, then fix it. But humans don't work that way." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. Sarah smiled and opened her toolbox. "We fix things first, then we figure out how they work. That's what we're good at. That's what makes us different." She looked at her crew. They were still nervous, but now she saw something else in their eyes. Excitement. Challenge. The same look they got when faced with an impossible repair job. "So what do you say?" she asked. "Want to try to bring this old thing back to life?" Marcus grinned and picked up his scanner. "Where do we start?" "The same place we always start," Sarah said, "with the power. Get the lights on, then worry about everything else." Yuki was already examining a collapsed support beam. "I can reinforce this with standard earth materials. It won't look pretty, but it will hold." Pavel looked up from his computer. "I think I can interface with their system. It will take some creative programming, but I have ideas." Sarah nodded. Around them, the ancient station waited patiently, as it had waited for 2 centuries. But now, for the first time, it had visitors who saw a challenge instead of an impossibility. It had humans. 3 days later, the station looked like a construction site. Human tools and materials were scattered everywhere. Extension cords ran along the walls like electric snakes. The smell of welding metal filled the air. Sarah's crew had turned the ancient alien structure into something that looked almost familiar. Marcus had connected power cables in ways that would make any engineer nervous. He ran lines from the crystal tree to machines that had been dark for centuries. Some connections worked perfectly. Others sparked and smoked before he found better ways to make them fit. "The alien power system uses different voltages than our equipment," he explained to Sarah while rewiring a control panel. But electricity is electricity. I just need to step it down through these transformers I brought from the ship. Sarah watched him work. Marcus had always been good at making impossible connections. He once fixed a broken radio by connecting it to a microwave oven. It should not have worked, but it did. That was the human way. Across the room, Yuki was solving structural problems with typical human creativity. The alien builders had used materials that were stronger than anything humans could make. But they had designed their supports in ways that made no sense to human engineers. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a beam that twisted through the air like a ribbon. "It's beautiful, but it's not efficient. All this curving wastes material and creates weak points." She had installed straight metal braces alongside the alien curves. Her supports looked crude compared to the flowing alien design, but they were solid. When she tested them with her equipment, they could hold more weight than the original structure. "Sometimes the simple way is the best way," she told Sarah. "These aliens were artists. We're builders. Both approaches work, but for different reasons." Pavel faced the biggest challenge. The station's computer system was completely different from anything humans had built. Instead of using numbers and letters, it used patterns of light and sound. Instead of storing information in files, it spread data through the entire system. Like WaterDot, he had been working for 2 days to create a translation program. His laptop was connected to the alien computer through a maze of cables and adapters. His screen showed progress bars and error messages in 3 different languages. "I'm not trying to understand their system," he explained while typing rapidly. "I'm teaching it to understand ours. It's like building a bridge between 2 different ways of thinking." Sarah brought him coffee and watched him work. "Is it learning?" "Faster than I expected," Pavel said. "Whatever built this computer was very smart. It adapts to new input quickly. I think it wants to communicate with us." As if responding to his words, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. New patterns appeared and disappeared. The crystal tree in the center of the room pulsed with more energy. "I think you're right," Sarah said. "It knows we're trying to help." By the end of the first week, they had restored power to 3 sections of the station. The lights came on. The air system started working. Gravity returned to areas that had been weightless for decades. It was progress, but they were still only scratching the surface of what the station could do. The Galactic Council had sent observers to watch their work. Representatives from the Altarian Federation and the Zephyrian Commonwealth floated outside in their ships, taking readings and making reports. Sarah could see them through the windows, keeping their distance. "They think we're crazy," Marcus said during a break. He was eating a sandwich while sitting on an alien machine that was older than human civilization. "They're probably right," Yuki replied. She was sketching structural plans on paper because the alien computers still could not display human style. Blueprints. No sane species would try to fix something this complex without understanding it first. "That's what makes us human," Sarah said. "We don't wait for permission. We don't wait for perfect understanding. We see something broken, and we try to fix it." Pavel looked up from his laptop. His eyes were red from staring at screens, but he was smiling. "I think I'm making real progress. The alien system is starting to respond to simple commands. Watch this." He typed something on his keyboard. The lights in the room dimmed, then brightened. He typed again, and a section of the wall became transparent, showing the stars outside. "It's learning our command structure," he said excitedly. "Give me another week, and I might be able to access the main systems." That night, Sarah could not sleep. She walked through the restored sections of the station, checking their work. The human additions looked strange next to the alien architecture. Extension cords taped to flowing walls. Metal brackets bolted to surfaces that curved like water. Warning signs in English attached to control panels covered with incomprehensible symbols. But it worked. The air was clean and warm. The lights stayed on. The gravity felt normal under her feet. Her crew had taken a dying alien structure and made it livable again through pure human stubbornness. She found herself in the main power room, standing before the crystal tree. It was brighter now, pulsing with steady energy. The machines around it hummed softly. Some had been repaired with human parts. Others remained mysteries, but they no longer looked threatening. They looked patient, like they were waiting for someone to understand them. "You're old, aren't you?" she said to the station. "Older than you look. Older than anyone realizes." The crystal tree pulsed once, as if answering her. The symbols on the walls shifted slightly. Sarah had the strange feeling that the station was listening to her thoughts. She heard footsteps behind her. Pavel entered the room, carrying his laptop and a cup of coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much to think about," Sarah replied. "How's the computer interface coming?" Pavel set down his laptop and connected it to the alien system. His screen immediately filled with new patterns and symbols. "Better than I hoped. Look at this." He showed her displays that looked almost like human computer screens. Simple graphics showed the station's status. Power levels, air quality, structural integrity. It was basic, but it was information they could understand. "The system is adapting to us," Pavel said. "It's learning to communicate in ways we can understand." That should be impossible. Most computer systems are rigid. They do exactly what they're programmed to do, nothing more. But this one is different? This one is alive, Pavel said quietly. Not alive like a person or an animal, but it thinks, it learns, it makes decisions. When I send it a command it doesn't understand, it tries different ways to interpret what I mean. Sarah stared at the screen. The implications were enormous. If the computer is intelligent, then it might know things. It might remember who built this place, and why. "That's what I'm hoping," Pavel said, "but I need to be careful. If I push too hard, I might damage something important. This system is more complex than anything humans have ever built." Over the following days, more sections of the station came online. The human team worked with increasing confidence. What had seemed impossible a week ago now felt achievable. They had developed a rhythm, a way of working with alien technology that none of the other galactic races had discovered. Marcus found that alien machines responded well to human electrical standards, as long as he was creative with the connections. Yuki learned that alien materials were stronger than they needed to be, which meant she could modify structures without weakening them. Pavel discovered that the station's computer was not just intelligent, but eager to learn. "It's like the station wants to work with us," Sarah observed during one of their daily meetings. "Every time we try something new, it adapts to help us succeed." "Maybe that's exactly what's happening," Yuki said. "Maybe this station was designed to work with someone, just not the original builders." The thought was strange, but it made sense. Why would someone build a station this advanced and then abandon it? Unless they had not abandoned it at all. Unless they had left it waiting for the right people to find it. Sarah looked around at her crew's work. Human solutions grafted onto alien technology. Simple fixes applied to complex problems. It should not have worked, but it did. And with each passing day, it worked better. Outside, the Galactic Council ships maintained their distance, watching and waiting. Inside, 4 humans continued doing what humans did best, fixing broken things through determination, creativity, and a complete refusal to give up. On the 10th day, everything changed. Sarah was checking the air recycling systems when the walls around her began to glow. Not the soft light they had grown used to, but bright patterns that moved like living things. The symbols flowed across every surface, forming new shapes and meanings. She ran to the main power room where her crew was working. They stood frozen, staring at the crystal tree. It blazed with light so bright they could barely look at it. The machines around the room had all activated at once, humming with power they had never shown before. "Pavel, what did you do?" Sarah shouted over the noise. Pavel looked terrified and excited at the same time. His laptop screen showed cascades of data flowing too fast to read. "I didn't do anything. I was trying to access the navigation system, and suddenly everything just turned on." The noise stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The crystal tree settled into a steady, bright glow. The machines continued to hum, but quietly now. The walls still showed moving symbols, but they moved slowly, like gentle waves. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere at once, as if the station itself was talking. "Thank you," it said in perfect English. "I have been waiting so long to wake up." The four humans stared at each other. Sarah was the first to recover her voice. "Who are you?" "I am what you would call an artificial intelligence," the voice replied. "My creators called me many names, but I think the word bridge fits best in your language. I connect things that should be connected." "Your creators," Yuki said slowly. "Who were they?" The walls around them changed. The flowing symbols were replaced by pictures. Stars and planets appeared, showing a galaxy full of life. Strange creatures moved through cities that floated in space. Ships traveled between worlds, carrying knowledge and friendship. "They were called the architects," Bridge said. "They built many things: worlds, stars, life itself, in some cases. This station was one of their smaller projects." Sarah looked around the huge room. "This is small?" "Compared to what they usually built, yes. This station was meant to be a caretaker facility, a place where their works could be maintained and protected. They built thousands of them throughout the galaxy." "What happened to them?" Marcus asked. The pictures on the walls changed. The happy scenes of galactic civilization were replaced by darkness. Ships fled in panic. Worlds went dark. The stars themselves seemed to die. "Something came from the space between galaxies," Ridge said sadly. "Something that feeds on intelligence and progress. Every 50,000 years, it returns to harvest the galaxy. My creators knew it was coming. They tried to prepare, but they ran out of time." Pavel stepped closer to his laptop. "So they built these stations as what? Weapons? Defense systems? Early warning networks? Safe harbors for survivors? But most importantly, they built us to find successors. Species that could maintain their legacy and prepare for the next harvest." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "How long ago was the last harvest?" 49,732 years ago, Bridge replied immediately. "Which means the next one will begin soon. I have been watching the galaxy, waiting for someone who could help me prepare." The pictures on the walls showed different alien species approaching similar stations. The images were clearly meant to show failure. Ship after ship retreated from the ancient structures. Crews gave up and left. Entire civilizations declared the stations too dangerous to approach. "We've been watching your species for some time," Bridge continued. "You approach problems differently than other races. Where they see complexity, you see puzzles to solve. Where they see danger, you see challenges to overcome. That's why the other races couldn't fix these stations," Yuki realized. "They tried to understand them completely before making any changes." "Exactly. But you began repairs immediately, learning as you worked. You connected my systems to your own, without knowing if they were compatible. You reinforced my structure with materials I was not designed to use. By all logical analysis, your approach should have failed. Marcus laughed. Story of humanity right there. We succeed by doing things that shouldn't work. The walls showed new images. Other stations scattered across the galaxy began to light up. One by one, they came online, responding to signals from the station where the humans worked. There are 47 stations in this galaxy, Bridge said. This is the first to fully awaken in over 2,000 years. Now that I am active, I can communicate with the others. They have been waiting in minimal power mode, just like I was. Sarah walked to the center of the room and looked up at the crystal tree. What do you need us to do? What you have been doing. Fix things. Improve things. Make them work better than they were designed to work. Each station needs caretakers like you. People who can maintain and adapt the technology without becoming dependent on it. Pavel looked at his laptop screen. It now showed a map of the galaxy with blinking dots scattered throughout. You want humans to run all of these stations? Not run them. Partner with them. Each station has an AI like me. We can handle the complex systems and vast databases. But we need people who can think creatively, who can solve problems we cannot anticipate, who can maintain our hardware when it breaks in ways we were not programmed to expect. The room around them began to change. Walls slid aside to reveal new areas. Manufacturing equipment emerged from hidden compartments. The ceiling opened to show a vast space filled with construction machinery. I can build anything my creators designed, Bridge explained. Ships, weapons, tools, entire cities. If needed. But I can only build what I was programmed to build. Humans can imagine new things, combine old ideas in new ways, fix problems with solutions that were never intended. Sarah looked at her crew. They had been overwhelmed by the station's size when they first arrived. Now she realized they had only seen a tiny fraction of what it could do. The harvest you mentioned, she said. When will it begin? The advanced scouts should arrive within the next 5 years. The main force will come approximately 10 years after that. This galaxy has never been prepared for them before. Previous civilizations have always been caught by surprise. The walls showed images of massive ships emerging from the darkness between galaxies. They were enormous, larger than moons. Behind them came fleets that stretched beyond counting. As Sarah watched, the ships approached galaxies and began systematically destroying every trace of intelligent life. But this time is different, Bridge said, and there was something like hope in his voice. This time, we have humans. You don't just fix machines. You make them better. You take something that barely works and turn it into something that exceeds its original design. What makes you so sure we can make a difference? Marcus asked. Bridge was quiet for a moment. The crystal tree pulsed thoughtfully. In 15 days, you have accomplished more than 3 advanced alien civilizations managed in over 50 years of trying. You approached my systems with no understanding of how they worked, yet you made them work better than they ever had before. You used primitive tools and basic materials to solve problems that stumped the galaxy's greatest engineers. The AI paused again, but most importantly, you never gave up. When something seemed impossible, you found a different way to approach it. When your solutions looked crude compared to my original design, you implemented them anyway, because they worked. That is what this galaxy has been missing. That is what the architects hoped someone would bring to their legacy. Sarah looked around at her crew's work. The human additions still looked rough compared to the flowing alien architecture. Extension cords and metal brackets seemed primitive next to crystal trees and living walls. But it all worked together now, alien and human technology supporting each other. So what happens next? She asked. Next, we wake up the other stations. We train more human teams. We prepare defenses that have never existed before. And we show the galaxy that sometimes the best way to preserve something ancient and beautiful is to fix it with duct tape and determination. Sarah smiled. When you put it that way, it sounds almost easy. It won't be easy, Bridge replied seriously. But for the first time in 50,000 years, I believe it might be possible. Because now I have something the architects never had. I have humans. Outside the station, the Galactic Council ships detected massive energy readings. For the first time in recorded history, an architect station was operating at full power. Inside, 4 humans looked at each other and got back to work. They had a galaxy to save, and they planned to fix it the only way they knew how, one problem at a time. 2 months after Bridge had awakened, Sarah stood in what used to be the main power room. It was now the command center of a facility that spanned 3 levels and connected to manufacturing bays, research labs, and communication arrays. Crystal Tree still stood in the center, but it was no longer alone. Human-built computers surrounded it. Their screens showing data from across the galaxy. Bridge had been teaching them about the architects and their civilization. The lessons were not always easy to hear. Show them the recordings from the Kepler sector, Sarah said to Bridge. The walls around them changed to display deep space. At first, everything looked normal. Stars shone steadily in the darkness. Then something moved at the edge of the image. It was hard to see at first, like a shadow crossing in front of distant lights. This was recorded by an automated probe 49,000 years ago, Bridge explained. Watch carefully. The shadow grew larger. As it approached the camera, its true size became clear. It was a ship, but calling it a ship seemed wrong. It was the size of a small moon, made of materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange patterns covered its surface, patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Devourers, Bridge said simply. That is what the architects called them. They come from the darkness between galaxies, where normal matter cannot exist. They feed on intelligence, creativity, the spark that makes life more than just chemistry. The recording showed more ships appearing. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They formed patterns in space that made no sense to human eyes. As Sarah watched, she felt a deep wrongness, as if the universe itself was being violated by their presence. How do they feed on intelligence? Pavel asked. He had been working on connecting human databases to Bridge's systems, trying to share information between the 2 technologies. They don't destroy civilizations quickly, Bridge replied. That would be wasteful. Instead, they harvest the thoughts, memories, and creativity of entire species. They leave the bodies alive but empty. Planets full of people who can no longer think, create, or dream, Marcus shuddered. That's worse than death. Much worse. Death is natural. This is theft of the soul itself. The recordings changed to show what happened to civilizations that encountered the Devourers. Advanced cities became empty shells. Spaceships drifted aimlessly, their crews alive but mindless. Art, music, literature, and science simply stopped, as if the universe had forgotten how to create new things. The cycle has repeated many times, Bridge continued. Every 50,000 years, they return when galactic civilization reaches a certain level of development. They harvest everything intelligent and creative, then retreat to the void to digest what they have taken. The galaxy goes dark for thousands of years, until new life evolves to replace what was lost. Yukai looked up from the structural plans she was studying. But the architects built these stations to fight back. That means they thought it was possible to win. They hoped it was possible, Bridge corrected. But they ran out of time. The harvest came before they could fully prepare. I was put into hibernation mode just as the first Devourer scouts arrived in this sector. Sarah walked to one of the human-built displays. It showed a map of the galaxy with glowing dots representing the architect stations. More dots were lighting up each day as Bridge made contact with other AIs. "How many stations have you awakened?" she asked. 31 are now fully operational. 12 more are coming online that need physical repairs. 4 are too damaged to restore. The remaining stations are still in deep hibernation mode. "And how many need human crews?" "All of them," Bridge said without hesitation. "Each AI is different, with its own personality and specializations. But they all need the same thing you gave me. People who can think beyond their original programming. People who can solve problems in ways that were never intended." Pavel looked up from his computer. "I've been analyzing the data from the other stations. Bridge is right. The AIs are incredibly advanced, but they're limited by their original design. They can't adapt the way humans can." "What about the Galactic Council?" Sarah asked. "Have you told them about the Devourers?" The question made Bridge pause. The crystal tree dimmed slightly, as if the AI was considering how to answer. "I have shared some information," Bridge said carefully, "but they are not ready to hear the full truth. Most galactic species approach problems through committees and consensus. They study issues for years before taking action. We do not have years." "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked. "I have detected the first scout ships at the galaxy's edge. They arrived 3 weeks ago and are moving toward the core systems. The main fleet will follow in approximately 8 years." Sarah felt her stomach drop. 8 years to prepare the entire galaxy? 8 years to prepare as much as we can. The architects had centuries to plan, and it was not enough. But they did not have humans. What makes humans so special? Yuki asked. "I mean, I know we're good at fixing things, but there must be other species with similar abilities." Bridge was quiet for a long moment. The walls around them showed images of different alien races. Each was clearly intelligent and technologically advanced. "Other species excel in specific areas," Bridge finally said. "The Altarians are master engineers who build perfect structures. The Zephyrians are brilliant scientists who understand the deepest laws of physics. The Vorthan Collective can process information faster than any computer." "But?" Sarah prompted. "But they all approach problems the same way. They analyze, they plan, they build consensus, they implement carefully tested solutions. It is logical and efficient and completely predictable." More images appeared on the walls. These showed the Devourers studying various alien technologies. In each case, the dark ships seemed to understand and counter whatever they encountered. The Devourers have faced thousands of galactic civilizations. They know how logical minds work. They can predict what any rational species will do when threatened. They have counters prepared for every conventional strategy. But humans aren't conventional, Marcus realized. Humans are the first species I have encountered that regularly does things that should not work. You fix advanced technology with primitive tools. You solve complex problems with simple solutions. You ignore expert analysis and try impossible approaches that somehow succeed. Sarah looked around at their work. The command center was a perfect example of what Bridge meant. Alien technology centuries ahead of human science was controlled by jury-rigged interfaces built from laptop computers and extension cords. It should have been a disaster, but it worked better than the original design. The Devourers cannot predict chaos, Bridge continued. They cannot plan for solutions that violate logical principles. They have never encountered a species that treats impossible problems as interesting puzzles. Pavel pulled up a new display on his screen. I've been analyzing their recorded behavior patterns. Bridge is right. They always respond to threats the same way, as if they're following a script. They've optimized their tactics against logical opponents. So we need to be illogical, Yuki asked. You need to be human, Bridge replied. which is the same thing from the Devourer's perspective. Sarah walked back to the crystal tree and placed her hand on its surface. It felt warm and somehow alive. What do you need us to do? Continue what you are doing, but on a galactic scale. Each station needs a human team. Each team needs to approach their AI and technology in their own way. No two stations should be identical. No two defense strategies should follow the same pattern. Organized chaos, Marcus said thoughtfully. Exactly. The Devourers will arrive expecting to face a coordinated galactic defense based on logical military principles. Instead, they will find dozens of independent stations, each operating according to human intuition and creativity. Each will be different. Each will be unpredictable. The walls showed new images. Architect stations across the galaxy were being modified by human teams. Each looked different. Some bristled with weapons that combined alien technology with human engineering. Others focused on detection and communication. Still others were being converted into massive manufacturing centers. It's working, Sarah realized. You're not just preparing defenses. You're building something completely new. Something the galaxy has never seen before, Bridge agreed. A defense network run by humans who refuse to accept that any problem is truly impossible to solve. The Devourers have never faced anything like it. And if we're wrong? Yuki asked quietly. If human unpredictability isn't enough? Bridge's answer was immediate. Then we will face the end, knowing we tried something different. But I do not believe we are wrong. In 2 months, you have accomplished things that should have taken decades. You have awakened technologies that were dormant for millennia. You have turned broken stations into fortresses. Sarah looked at her crew. They had been ordinary salvage operators just months ago. Now they were training other humans to partner with ancient A's, preparing to fight an enemy that had never been defeated. One more question, she said to Bridge. Why didn't the architects try the chaotic approach themselves? Because they were too advanced, Bridge replied sadly. They had. 6 months after their first arrival at the broken station, Captain Sarah Chun stood in the central command center of what was now called Guardian Station Alpha. Through the massive windows, she could see a sight that would have been impossible to imagine when they first docked their small salvage ship. The station had grown. Human engineering teams had added new sections, weapons platforms, and manufacturing bays. The flowing alien architecture now mixed with angular human construction in ways that should have looked wrong, but somehow felt right. It was like watching 2 different symphonies played at the same time and discovering they created perfect harmony. Morning report, Captain, Marcus said, approaching with a tablet full of data. He still served as her systems specialist, but now he coordinated the work of dozens of human technicians spread across multiple levels of the station. How many stations are fully operational now? Sarah asked. 43 out of 47. The 4 damaged ones are being rebuilt from scratch using hybrid human architect technology. We should have the entire network online within 2 months. Sarah nodded and looked at the galaxy map displayed on the main screen. Each operational station showed as a bright blue dot. Lines connected them, showing the communication network that Bridge and the other A is used to coordinate their activities. It looked like a web of light stretched across the galaxy. And the Devourer scouts? Marcus's expression grew serious. They've reached the middle rim. Bridge estimates they'll arrive in our sector within 18 months. The main fleet is still approximately 6 years behind them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka approached from the engineering station. Her small team had grown into a construction force of over 200 humans and friendly aliens. They had developed new techniques for combining architect technology with more conventional materials, creating hybrid systems that were both beautiful and practical. The manufacturing bays are exceeding all projections, she reported. We're producing defensive satellites at twice the planned rate. Each one is different, based on ideas submitted by human teams throughout the galaxy. The Devourers won't know what to expect. Sarah smiled. That was exactly the point. Each Guardian station was developing its own approach to defense. Some focused on direct combat, bristling with weapons that combined human ingenuity with architect power sources. Others specialized in detection and communication, creating sensor networks that could track enemy movements across vast distances. Still others had become mobile, preparing to relocate if the battle required it. The diversity was intentional. Bridge and the other A had learned that human creativity worked best when it was not restricted by rigid plans. Each station's crew was encouraged to develop their own strategies, their own modifications, their own solutions to the challenges they faced. Pavel walked over from his computer array. His original laptop had been replaced by a sophisticated interface that let him communicate with A across the galaxy. But he still kept the old machine nearby, a reminder of how far they had come. "I've got interesting news from the Outer Rim stations," he said. "They've detected something the scout ships are leaving behind." "What kind of something?" Sarah asked. Pavel pulled up a display showing deep space. At first, it looked empty. Then, he enhanced the image, and Sarah could see faint structures floating in the darkness. "They're building something," Pavel explained. "The scouts aren't just exploring. They're constructing devices." Bridge thinks they might be amplifiers for whatever technology the Devourers use to harvest intelligence. Sarah studied the images. The structures were clearly artificial, but they followed no design principles. She recognized they seemed to grow rather than being built, spreading through space like mechanical viruses. How long before they're finished? Unknown. But the rate of construction is accelerating. The main fleet might not need to wait 6 years. If these amplifiers work the way Bridge suspects, they could begin the harvest as soon as they're complete. Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her stomach. It was the same feeling she'd had when they first approached the broken station. The feeling that they were facing something much larger and more dangerous than they had prepared for. But she also felt something else. Confidence. Not the blind confidence of ignorance, but the earned confidence that came from solving impossible problems before. "Then we'll have to be ready sooner than we planned," she said simply. "Bridge, are you monitoring this conversation?" "Always, Captain Chun," came the AI's voice from speakers throughout the command center. "I have been analyzing the amplifier structures. They are indeed designed to extend the Devourer's harvesting range. If they become fully operational, the enemy could drain the intelligence from entire star systems without sending their main fleet. Can we stop them? Not through conventional military action. The amplifiers are heavily defended and regenerate when damaged, but I believe there may be another approach." Sarah waited. She had learned that Bridge often paused dramatically when it was about to suggest something particularly creative or dangerous. "The amplifiers require a specific type of energy to function," Bridge continued. "They feed on the same intelligence and creativity they are designed to harvest. If we could overload them with chaotic, unpredictable human thought patterns, they might burn out," Sarah finished, "or turn into something else entirely." "Exactly. But it would require human crews to get very close to the devices. Close enough to interface directly with their control systems." Marcus looked up from his tablet. "That sounds incredibly dangerous." "Most human solutions sound incredibly dangerous," Bridge replied with what Sarah had learned to recognize as the AI's version of humor. "That is what makes them effective." Over the following weeks, volunteer crews from across the galaxy arrived. At Guardian Station Alpha, they came from salvage ships, exploration vessels, mining operations, and transport fleets. They were not soldiers or scientists. They were ordinary humans who had heard that their galaxy needed fixing and had come to help. Sarah watched them train with a mixture of pride and worry. They learned to interface with architect technology, to think creatively under pressure, to solve problems that had no logical solutions. Most importantly, they learned to work with their AI partners, developing the kind of intuitive cooperation that had made the Guardian project possible. "They're ready," Yuki announced after the final training exercise. "Not perfectly trained, but ready enough." And perfectly trained humans might not work anyway. The chaos of incomplete preparation might be exactly what we need. Sarah nodded. Perfect preparation was what logical species did. Humans specialized in making things work despite incomplete preparation. The mission launched on a Tuesday morning. 50 small ships, each crewed by humans and powered by hybrid technology, departed for the Outer Rim. Their job was to reach the Devourer amplifiers and connect human consciousness directly to alien technology designed to harvest intelligence. It was exactly the kind of plan that should not work. "Status report from the strike teams," Pavel announced 3 days later. Sarah hurried to the communication station. The screens showed locations of the human ships as they approached their targets. Several had already reached the amplifier sites. "Strike. Team 7 is making contact now," Pavel said, the screen filled with an image from space. The Devourer amplifier hung in the darkness like a mechanical cancer, its surface crawling with patterns that hurt to look at. A small human ship approached it carefully. "This is Captain Torres," came a voice over the radio. "Beginning interface with the target. It's responding strangely, like it's confused by our presence." "Because it is," Bridge said. "The amplifier is designed to process orderly, logical thought patterns. Human consciousness is too chaotic for it to analyze properly." They watched as Captain Torres's ship connected to the alien structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the amplifier began to change. Its dark surface flickered with new colors. The crawling patterns shifted into forms that almost looked like human writing. "It's working," Torres reported, excitement clear in her voice. "The device is trying to process our thoughts, but it can't. It's overloading. Wait, ... Something else is happening." The amplifier suddenly blazed with light. But instead of the cold, hungry glow it had shown before, this light seemed warm and alive. The structure itself began to reshape. It's mechanical. Virus appearance transforming into something that looked almost like a flower made of metal and energy. "The amplifier has been converted," Bridge announced, wonder in its artificial voice. "Instead of harvesting intelligence, it is now generating it, creating new thoughts and possibilities rather than consuming them." Similar reports came in from other strike teams. Across the galaxy's edge, Devourer amplifiers were being transformed from weapons of harvest into engines of creation. The enemy's own technology was being turned against them in ways they could never have anticipated. "The main Devourer fleet has changed course," Pavel reported. "They're accelerating toward us. I think they know what we've done." Sarah looked around the command center. Her crew, her friends, her fellow humans who had started this incredible journey by refusing to give up on a broken space station. They had grown into something none of them had expected to become. "How long until they arrive?" she asked.